welcome back to part 8 of our Game of the Decade series, in which we go through the 2010s year by year to find the best game of each one, before coming back to debate which of the 10 nominees are the true Game of the Decade. And this time is 2017's turn, which means things are sure to get heated. The 5 participating GameXplain members each have 3.5 minutes to make their case for what they believe the best game of that year is, and then they'll have to defend it for the same amount of time in the interrogation round. Once everyone's presented and defended their game, we'll all vote, and that includes you too, as we're counting our lovely fan base as a 6th GameXplain member. Just use the link in the description below to make your voice heard, and we'll announce the results at the beginning of the next year's video. And speaking of which, congratulations to Doom for taking the crown as our nomination for 2016's Game of the Decade. And with that, let's get to our 2017 Game of the Decade arguments. Take it away, John.
Okay, so 2017 is a year of so many games, and of course we cannot list all of them because there are so many, so here's just Puyo Puyo Tetris. I'm not nominating it, I just want to say this is a great game for the year. What I'm actually nominating though, is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I'm sure a lot of other GameXplain members wanted this game, because of course it redefined the open world genre, but I'm not going to go over that because that takes a long time to do and I only have 3 minutes to do it, so let's just keep going on. So, here's the problema with open world games. They are rigid, and they are formulaic. So look at this screenshot of Assassin's Creed. There's a little waypoint down there in the bottom left, your map has an exclamation mark, there's just markers absolutely everywhere. It's an open world game full of freedom, but you're sort of forced to just follow these markers all the time. So while it sort of gives you the illusion of freedom, freedom isn't really incentivized. You're pushed down this path, following markers. Quests are just follow this marker, talk to this person, follow their marker. That's what open world games are. Breath of the Wild, though, was nothing like that. It's about improvisation. So in Breath of the Wild, you can't walk forever. Eventually you're going to have to cross a river. Eventually you're going to have to climb a wall. So the thing about Breath of the Wild is every single time you have to change up how you travel. And even with weapons as well. Weapons break after a while. You can't just keep doing the same thing forever, and that is part of why Breath of the Wild is just so engaging. I love the durability of weapons because it keeps you changing up your moves and using every single tool that you have. All of this is good stuff. And you're never stuck doing the same thing. Landscapes are built like this. So every single time you get to the top of a mountain, you see all these other things that you can try and get to. So you'll likely first see towers. And when you get to a tower, you'll likely see shrines. You'll see these orange things glowing in the distance. And once you go to a shrine, you'll probably see Korok seeds. And Koroks, I'll defend them a second. So Koroks, I believe, sort of keep that... it keeps you looking at the world map rather than looking down at the actual map. So you're always looking at the actual environment. You'll see these weird trees out of place and you go and see them. Once you get to those trees, you'll see like a shrine in the distance. You're always seeing something new and it's always engaging your curiosity. Because every single time you see something else. It's all about the journey, not the destination. Breath of the Wild constantly catches your attention with something new. And I know some people have played this game for 100 hours and still have not beaten it. Because the objective isn't necessarily the story of this game. The objective is just being in this world. It's all about the wild. And yeah, Koroks may seem dumb, but I think seeing these flowers off in the distance and having like these few repeated puzzles do just sort of catch your eye much better than just an endless list of puzzles would. But what about the dungeons? Well, basically, I've made this chart, and that's a bit too zoomed in, so let's zoom out. That is what the dungeons are in the grand scheme of Breath of the Wild. This game revolves entirely around the overworld, more than any other Zelda. In Ocarina of Time, the overworld is pretty much just a small hub, and you're barely there in the grand scheme of the adventure. You're always in towns, you're always in dungeons. Breath of the Wild is not about
30 seconds.
That. So as I'm saying, navigation is the puzzle in Breath of the Wild, and mastery is there. There's also unpredictable elements. So let's say you'll find a bokoblin here. You'll throw your torch at them, and like, oh, I'm gonna get in, and oh no, his torch has caught fire, I'm doomed. There's so many unpredictable things. And of course there's memories. I glided into Death Mountain, on fire. I went to Eventide Island, and then there's unpredictable stuff too, so these memories don't stop. You can play this game for 300 hours and still find brand new memories.
Alright.
Damn it.
Nice job, John.
Nice. Well done.
Okay.
Very nice. Yeah. I was just raptured.
You ready to be cross-examined?
I think so.
Alright, let's get started, and I guess I'll kick things off here. So John, it's a little convenient that you say one of the objectives of the game isn't the story. It seems like an easy way of writing off everything the game doesn't do well. Chief among them is the story, in that it's pretty much non-existent. Is that a problem for Breath of the Wild, in that it It eschews a lot of traditional game elements that I think a lot of people do play games for, such as the story.
I don't think that is a problem. I think story is what pushes you into the world, and then once you're in the world, you're in there just for yourself. The story elements, they obviously aren't as strong as some other Zelda games, but the core focus of Breath of the Wild is the wild, and once you're in there, I think you can find your own objective there.
The game notoriously starts out pretty difficult, John. People were thrown off by how challenging it was. However, by the end of the game, that ease has kind of gone away, that difficulty has kind of gone away, and the game gets a little easy, and I don't know, I think that kind of takes away from it. I feel like the challenge should have been there to keep that omnipresent, like you gotta improvise, but by the end you kind of loaded up on weapons, and yeah, you might break, but you still have, I have 3 more just like it ready to go, so it never became a problem. Do you see that as an issue?
I agree to an extent. I think the Master Sword, being a permanent weapon, was a bit of a mistake. I feel like the core of the game is having, to constantly use up your items and use a variety of different items, and when the Master Sword is constantly in your inventory, there's no real need to keep using the rest of it. So I do agree that the post-game does sort of lose the focus of the beginning, but I still think just traversing the world is always fun. I don't think there's any single-player game that provides the same moment-to-moment enjoyment as Breath of the Wild does. Even 400, 500 hours in, you're still having fun.
Going back to the Master Sword for a second, John, I think obtaining the Master Sword is one of the pivotal moments in any Zelda game, and I think it's one moment that Breath of the Wild does very poorly because of just how bad it feels to be in the Sacred Forest thanks to all the massive frame rate issues. How do you defend that?
That is right, yeah. They did patch the game later on, but of course the Korok Forest is notable for having low frame rate drops. That's hard to defend, Steve. It's not an area you go to very often, but of course, yeah, as you say, getting the Master Sword is a big moment in any Zelda game, and having those frame rate drops do take away a little bit.
Going back to the wonky difficulty balance for a second, once you learn the best recipes, you can just make those recipes over and over again to get like full life recovery plus extra hearts whenever you want, taking the teeth out of every single battle in the game. Do you think they should have done more to counterbalance that, and how can you defend that?
I don't think so, actually. I think this is a game about survival, and if you want to spend time making all these recipes, then go for it. Maybe they could have limited it, but then I think you'd have people complaining that they limited it.
All right.
I'm actually surprised Andre has nothing to say about the inventory, which has always been one of his big issues.
Well, I figured someone would bring it up. Defend the terrible inventory.
I think quick selecting your items is fine. Holding right on the D-pad and use the right stick to flick through them, that's fine. But going through your grand inventory and you're sort of flicking through it with the right stick and going through all these columns, yeah, it's a bit clunky. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's just, it could be better.
Counter argument, it's not fine.
Time.
Nobody threw out the fact that you can either have full stamina or full hearts, but never both.
It's too late for that.
That wasn't an issue.
All right, good job, John. All right.
Good job. Well done.
Alrighty, nicely done.
Okay, well, I believe, Ash, you are up next.
Alright, so here we go. Game of the Year 2017. So in Andre's presentation for his 2010 Game of the Year, he was right about one thing. Space is awesome, and games with space in them are awesome too. But you know what else is just as awesome?
Go on.
Robots. Robots are awesome, and any game with robots are even better. And you know what else is really, really awesome? Dinosaurs. And if you combine those two things, if you combine those two things, what do you get? The coolest thing ever? Robot dinosaurs. And with that in mind, my game of the year for 2017 is Horizon Zero Dawn. So why Horizon? Well, it's one of the most well-realized sci-fi stories in any game ever. And of course, along with Mass Effect 2, which I nominated previously, this is such a great sci-fi story. The story piles on the mystery early on and actually delivers on that mystery, which is not... that doesn't often happen in stories with a lot of promise in video games, but it delivers on that sci-fi mystery throughout, and not just in one big exposition dump at the end. The story is paced very well in terms of plot point teases and exposition, and the big reveal in terms of how the world ended up the way it is in this post-apocalypse really is fantastic. And even though I tried to guess it multiple times throughout the game, I didn't get it right, so I thought that was pretty cool. And not to mention, all the cool stuff that you're doing in the story with characters you like, it's happening now, not 100 years ago, Breath of the Wild. You are in the cool stuff with the cool characters right now. You don't have to go through the game wishing you could be part of this stuff that was happening a century ago. And of course, the world itself is strikingly beautiful for a post-apocalyptic world. And it actually takes a page from Enslaved in that it's so beautiful. I mean, look at these screenshots. These are in-game screenshots of how gorgeous this game is, and I would say this has the best graphics of the generation, for me personally. Now, the open world itself is a pleasure to explore. It's large, but it's not so large that it's overwhelming, which is one thing that really affects me in open world games, and seems to be a common pitfall in my opinion. And there's actual stuff to do in that open world. There are landmarks, ancient vessels, metal flowers, bandit camps, corrupted machines, hunting grounds. You're always stumbling across things to explore and things to do, and here's an example of that. I'm not going to say the map design itself is the best with all those icons, but that's a good idea of just one portion of the map, all the stuff there is to do there. Moving on, the combat itself is fantastic, and I'm going to hopefully skip to this time. There we go. Just check out this video of this combat. It's incredible, right? It's multi-layered. You can dismantle dinosaurs piece by piece. You have to think on your feet. Like, look at that. It's the best combat of any game I've played this entire year. It's exhilarating. Dinosaurs can, join the fight at any time, and you have to, be on your feet. There are multiple different weapons. You can freeze enemies, you can do fire damage to them, you can lay traps to tie them down with cables. The combat is so open-ended. It's incredible. So, no. That was not what I wanted to do. Okay. And then the final reason Horizon's so awesome, Aloy. Just Aloy herself. Look at her design. She's striking, she's badass, and she's functional. She's not focused on sexualization, which is rare for female video game characters, especially these days. This is like the quintessential idea of a really cool female character, in my opinion. She's likable and relatable. She just wants to do the right thing while searching for clues to her past. She's not the most complex character in the world, but I do think she has more depth and nuance than she sometimes gets credit for, and she's voiced by Ashley Birch, which, enough said, right? And just one more metal dino, Robo Dino, just to close this out, and that is my presentation.
All right. Good job, Ash. You made it in time, too.
Yeah.
Yes, just barely. Cool, thank you.
Well, are you ready to be cross-examined?
I am ready.
All right, well, let's get to it. And I'll start off, because I have to, because you made a very compelling case with your space and dinosaurs argument.
Nice.
You also did mention, however, that's an open world, but this came pretty much out at the same time as Breath of the Wild. And there are times, many times, in fact, I felt like in Horizon Zero Dawn, that I was just being funneled down, thin, alleyways or between mountains that basically felt like linear paths at times. I didn't have the same openness I had in Breath of the Wild. So how does this game stack, how do you defend this game's open world versus Breath of the Wild in a year that same game came out in?
I mean, frankly, I think it's impossible to defend any open game in terms of what Breath of the Wild did in terms of its world design. There has never been any game like Breath of the Wild, and if you'll remember, it was very difficult for me to choose between Breath of the Wild and Horizon for our actual game of the year 2 years ago. But I do think it is the best example of a pre-Breath of the Wild open world done very, very well. Yes, it does funnel you to a degree. The open world is clearly sectioned off into two main sections with that kind of funnel between the mountains. I agree with you. But the world is so dense and there's so much to do, and it's very easy to get lost in individual areas because it's actually so dense. So I agree, it's not as obviously freeform as Breath of the Wild, but no other open world game is either.
So you mentioned that there's a ton of other stuff to do and they're all worthwhile. As somebody who's not played this game at all yet, even though I own it, what are these extra activities and why are they worthwhile?
So there are you can find vessels from the previous post-apocalyptic world that the people of the tribes of now don't know what they are, and so you can find various things from the human society that predated the apocalypse, and through that you get exposition, story exposition, and glimpses into what happened in the past. Kind of like Metroid Prime, actually, in the sense that you don't have to go out of your way for these extra bits of lore, but you can, and the way you do that is by looking for the metal flowers, is by looking for the ancient vessels, and things like that. And then, of course, with the corrupted machines, those are extra hard bosses for you to take down. The bandit camps are fun to clear out because the combat is fun, and you get treasures and loot from it. So it is very much like Metroid Prime in that it's based on, or it's predicated on finding extra optional little bits of lore if you're as into the world as I was.
Tell me about the traversal.
The traversal is just, it's a pleasure just because the game is so strikingly gorgeous. I mean, there's not a place you can go in that world that isn't just beautiful, and you feel that just going from point A to point B. I would often not, there's so many fast travel locations, you never have to really go on foot once you've found a bunch of places, but I would choose not to fast travel a lot of the time because the game is just so beautiful, and not just the graphics, but the environmental sounds, the wind swaying through the grass, the music is beautiful, the soundtrack is absolutely gorgeous, and so you just feel part of this world, and you get just so wrapped into the atmosphere of the world that just traversing is just, it's a pleasure. And of course now, again, it's not Breath of the Wild. You can't climb anything. It is a pre-Breath of the Wild open world game. So you can't climb everything. There, it is very much more limited in that aspect. But I think it is, as I said, the best example of a pre-Breath of the Wild open world done very well.
Ash, one of your main selling points was robot dinosaurs. If I don't give a crap about robot dinosaurs, am I still going to want to play this game?
You might, just because for the technical splendor of it all and the fantastic sci-fi story, but you are also wrong, because robot dinosaurs are objectively awesome.
I mean, they're not fat mascots, but okay.
I mean, that's true.
What if you had a fat robot dinosaur? Good job, Ash.
Thank you.
All right, Derek, you're up. Oh, man, I'm not used to this non-braggy tagline.
Yeah, no braggy braggy tagline this year, because we're buckling down. We're getting serious this one, and I'm bringing the big guns, because 2017 is a hell of a year. Breath of the Wild, good game. Horizon Zero Dawn, good game. Better game? Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Oh, wow.
It is the best game of this year, hands down, and expands upon the original in meaningful ways. It is a worthy sequel in every sense of the word, and improves upon the original's issues. Ash had problems with the side quest design of the original. Yeah, it's a little hard to find them. You might have to wander around a bit in order to actually accomplish them. Here you have nicely set out what you need to do, where you need to go for a lot of them, and a breakdown to see what you have to do each time. The side quests, I guess, that are easier to track, and the combat is different, yet still recognizably Xenoblade. Rather than a long list of different arts that you can use, you are limited to 3 that you can cycle between thanks to your different blades. And yeah, it seems overwhelming if you see it all in one place, but they siphon it out in just enough spaces and time for you to get used to the previous one before they introduce the next element. And putting all those together is fantastic. This is just a great year for great-looking games, because look at these visuals. This is just in-game vista. You're looking out over the first area that you're going to. This is the first place you go to that has a nice, big, open flare to it, and just shows the sheer size. This is only like a tenth of what you can actually explore of this one area. You can have this like sort of undersea place that you can go to that's really new and interesting and different compared to what else is out there. And look at this. This is simply gorgeous in all the colors and the layout and the places that you can go to. Every little space you see here, you can visit in the game, and it is gorgeous. Plus, it's just one hell of a story. I can't say the Horizon story, but this tells its own unique story where every beat matters, everything that's brought up comes back in an important way and is answered. It also has engaging characters that evolve beyond their apparent stereotypes. They seem like the base types that you've seen a million times before, but they all have something unique to them that makes them just better. Plus, it has one of the best climaxes in gaming, that with a build-up that just doesn't let up once it gets going. There's 12 chapters in the game. I think you'll hit the final build-up towards the climax in Chapter 9, and it just keeps going and getting better and better and better as you go along. Plus, it is somehow a continuation of the original, but how that is, I'm going to keep a secret, because that is also one of the best moments. It also cemented Xenoblade as Nintendo's premier RPG. And as of June 2018, it has sold 1.42 million copies and became Monolith Soft's best-selling game ever. That's over the entire Xenosaga series, the previous Xenoblade games, Xenogears, what have you, Baten Kaitos. This is their best game ever, and it actually sold better in the West compared to Japan. The West loves it. Another perfect soundtrack, with every song capturing the environment and mood perfectly, with different music depending on the time of day, and it's more than just ambient sounds like Breath of the Wild. Plus, this is an adventure. You're going out into this world, exploring it, taking down monsters, and it is just a blast to play. Plus, there's tons to do. It was continually improved after the release, adding new blades, new quests, and tightened up the UI, and the difficulties modes were added so it could be changed at any time to make it the most accessible Xenoblade game out there.
All right. Nicely done.
Nice.
Okay. So who wants to kick off the cross-examination?
All right, so Derek, in my opinion, oftentimes less is more. And when I think of Xenoblade 2's battle system, I think not just more, but more, to the point where there is way too much going on. I hate this battle system. Can you please defend it to me? Because it never warmed up to me over the course of the entire game.
I can, because I know you went to a preview event where you were just shoved into the middle of the combat with no real regard to what's going on. And that's not a great way to get into this, because there is so many elements to it. But it is extremely tactical in how you only auto attack when you're standing still, so you have to really keep an eye on your placement more than any other. You can customize your battle system, your arts based on the blades you get, and really detail what kind of combat system you want. And you talked about how enemies are sometimes sponges as far as damage, and it just feels like it takes forever to get that done. And I never really felt that. Like, yeah, they can take a while, but never to the point of their sponges. However, luckily for you, it's been updated with the UI and all these improvements that I talked about, and you can make it easier, the game easier, so they're not as much of a sponge. I think there's even specific ways that you can have minutia where you change those things up and make it as accessible as possible. And I think the battle system really shines once you get that grasp on it and not have to worry about all those major attacks. You can really have it come together and pull off some spectacular moves.
All right, Derek. So for me, once I got to the world tree, Xenoblade lost a lot of steam, and I felt like I was just continuing to play through it to see the story through to its conclusion. How do you defend the game past the world tree to the end of the story?
Well, that's the climax I was talking about. I love that section, so I'm not sure why you thought it lost steam, because the stakes of that at that point were really built up. And I know that's all story related, but still, even exploring the world tree, discovering the mysteries of it, and finally seeing this place, I think is a wonderful payoff to the grand open worlds that you were at before. Yeah, it funnels you a lot more than what came previously, but I still found myself completely invested in what was going on.
The original Xenoblade took place on the body of a dead god, and it was super contextual. You'd look up and see exactly where you are on that god. Whereas Xenoblade 2 takes place on a bunch of titans. Is that a downgrade?
I don't think so, because you don't get the same sense of like, oh, I'm on its collarbone or its knee or what have you. But you still can see the Titans' heads or parts of them and get the sense of movement. And there's a great moment where they play with this idea that the Titans can actually move, and when you go back to them, they'll actually have a different background to really show that they've moved and give that context. And it's something that you couldn't really achieve with the original Xenoblade. You get it to a small degree, but I think played up a lot more with Xenoblade 2, and I think it makes it just as good. Maybe not to the same degree, but still more than worthy.
All right, Derek, blades are very important in the battle system, obviously, but they're locked behind an unpaid gacha mechanic. Defend that, please.
That is probably one of the weakest elements to it. It makes you have to open them up continually, and I have gotten every blade in the game except for Cosmos, pre-patches and all that stuff. That was definitely aggravating and is no good way to it. It is probably the weakest aspect.
All right.
Yeah.
Good job, Derek.
Nice.
Cool.
Thank you.
Nicely done, Derek.
Thank you, guys.
Well, I think that means I'm up next.
Oh, Lord, here we go.
Oh, boy.
All right.
All right.
Oh,
Gee, I
Lord.
wonder what this is going to be.
Are y'all buckled in?
Yes,
So,
Maybe.
I think.
I hope so. It's about to get real. Alright, so, I realize I'm facing an uphill battle, so I'm about to drop a bomb on y'all, alright? So this is the Game of the Decade 2017, or 25 Reasons Super Mario Odyssey butt stomps Zelda Breath of the Wild. So let's get to it. Number 1, every level in Mario Odyssey is a mini Breath of the Wild. It's a giant open world for you to explore. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you do in pretty much any order. There is very little guidance. You can go about any world in any order for the most part once you're in that world, or rather, yeah. And then number 2, worlds evolve. These are constantly changing, unlike Breath of the Wild's pretty much static world, in which these courses actually evolve depending on what you accomplish in them. That's cool. Number 3, body snatching. Can you body snatch in Breath of the Wild? I think not. Look at that image right there, Mario hopping into a Goomba. It's pure insanity. I actually couldn't fit every object you can possess in the game on screen because there's so much to it. Number 4, dinosaurs! Real ones! Number 5, you can be the T-Rex. That's right, you can possess a T-Rex and play as it. Number 6, constant surprises, whether it's becoming electricity, talking to a sphinx, or becoming letters. There is so much going on here. Number 7, nose physics. Number 8, 60 FPS. You can see a live demonstration of the FPS in Mario versus the FPS in Zelda. Number 9, there's a Jurassic Park escape sequence, and it is fantastic. Number 10, let me play a sample of the music in Breath of the Wild real quick. This is on Game Explained, by the way. I don't know if you ever saw this video.
I don't watch that channel.
That's Breath of the Wild. Here's Mario Odyssey. It's so good! It instantly fills you with determination and just excitement. It's great. Number 11. This is a look at Breath of the Wild story. And Mario has slightly more. Number 12, Pauline. Number 13, Lion Epona. Number 14, space! Number 15, more diverse regions. In Breath of the Wild, you have fields, forests, snowy mountains. In Mario, you have New York. You have Dark Souls. You have the moon. And the moon is really fun in low gravity. Zelda has no low gravity jumping. Number 17, killer 2D segments, which are way better than A Link Between Worlds, even though that's a different game, it still counts here. Number 18, no breakable weapons. Cappy will never break on you. Number 19, a better inventory as an extension of that, because there isn't one. Number 20, better ending sequence. The final boss in Zelda is lame, whereas the final sequence in Mario is amazing, where you're playing as Bowser to an epic song. Number 21, songs with lyrics. I play, but I don't have time, you know what it is. Number 22, there is more personality in in this one scene of Mario than all of Link in Breath of the Wild. Number 23, Mario can run across water as opposed to Link's slow as boat in Breath of the Wild. Number 24, the ending is way better in Mario. I don't remember what Breath of the Wild is. Does anyone? Number 25, constant fun, no downtime. In Breath of the Wild, you're climbing for half
30
of it.
seconds.
Look at Mario. You can jump off buildings. There's no limit here. So that was my final one. Except, haha, you thought it was over. It's not. Number 26, better post-game rewards. Instead of going to poop, you go to the moon for even more. Number 27, penguins. Number 28, amazing details. Number 29, better highs that make you happy. Number 30, better costumes. Look at that. You can be a freaking pirate or skeleton. Number 31, better dogs, including this one wearing a hat.
And
finally,
time.
I wrap it up on this. Game Explained with a Y.
Nice.
Very nicely done.
I'm out of breath. Jeez.
I bet.
All right. I'm ready for cross-examination because I have nothing I need to defend.
I noticed you didn't mention one key thing about this game, Andre. The moons. You mentioned the moon, but not the collectible moons, and how the fact that there was just so many of them made kind of collecting them a little boring after a while. Like, it's like, oh, I stepped this way. Oh, a moon. Oh, I stepped this way. Oh, a moon. You kind of lost interest in gathering moons after a while because they're just so common. Defend that.
I think the structure of Mario Odyssey depended on there being moons around almost every corner. It encourages exploration and experimentation. Sure, there are times where you'll come across a string of them, but it also encourages you to test what all you can do in this world, because there are many times when it gets quite hard to find some of those moons, and I equate it to an Easter egg hunt, where it starts off pretty quick at first. We're gonna find a bunch of Easter eggs, but then when we get down to those last few, that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky. And no one ever complains about having too many Easter eggs to find in an Easter egg hunt. So I think that complaint is overblown.
Some people feel that the tactile motion controls are like a problem in this game. So for some moons you gotta shake the controller to get further, and you can't do it without motion. Is that a problem?
I think there was maybe one situation in the game where you might need the faster motion controls that motion controls enables. So I don't think of it as a big issue. Yeah, it probably should be accessible via standard controls, but I don't think it's a hindrance if you don't have access to it, or if you don't want to do motion controls. So I don't think it's a big deal.
So, Andre, you spent your entire presentation trashing Breath of the Wild in favor of Odyssey, but Breath of the Wild takes Zelda's conventions and reimagines them to be something completely new, whereas Mario Odyssey really just takes what Mario has always done and does it very well. How do you defend a perceived lack of innovation in
I don't
Odyssey?
think it's fair to hold it against Mario that it's just maintained a higher standard of quality over its lifespan than Zelda has. Zelda needed a change. Mario didn't. And they changed it anyway. They gave you this crazy body snatch. Do you not see my slide about body snatching? What other game can you do that in? Like a platforming game? What?
But isn't that just an unimaginative power-up?
It's an imaginative 30 power-ups. 30 plus power-ups.
All right, Andre, you probably know where I'm going with this, but one of my favorite things about 3D Mario games is the post-game, where Nintendo's designers get to take off the kid gloves and really challenge you with some really fun, tough levels. That never happens in Mario Odyssey. It never gets harder. The difficulty kind of stays bumbling and very, kind of kid's gloves on throughout the whole game, even the post-game. Can you defend that?
I think the final post-game challenge is pretty difficult. I remember that one being pretty tough. Aside from that, yeah, it might be on the easier side. For me, I was having so much fun, I never once thought about the difficulty or lack thereof. So I just enjoyed getting around this world and the movement and the exploration. I mean, this game harkens back to the Mario 64 more collectathon style of platforming than the very structured nature of Mario Galaxy or 3D Land and 3D World.
30 seconds.
So that inherently affects the difficulty curve, and I never found it really lacking. It's probably not particularly tough all the time, but I didn't find it to be an issue.
Alright, what the heck's up with the name Darker Side of the Moon? How's it darker? That's not possible.
You got me there, Derek. That's the argument that stumps me.
Is Mario as hot as Link?
This is a very awkward
And
it's something costume
Saved by the Bell.
Nice.
Time.
All right.
Well done.
Thank you.
Nice. Nicely done.
All right, we have one more. Steve, you're up.
Oh boy. I'm in the anchor position here. Okay, so before I begin, I have had a rough go of this decade. We have taken 7 straight L's now. And so I'm feeling a little discouraged. So before I reveal my pick for 2017's Game of the Year, I want to start with some inspirational words. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Perseverance can overcome all obstacles. Even the laws of nature cannot stop it. And the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And with these inspirational quotes in mind, I humbly submit my pick for 2017's Game of the Year.
Wow.
Nice.
Oh, man.
I'm actually shocked this wasn't Ash.
Some extra effort
It was
in
close.
the editing here.
Yeah.
We're just watching the whole game.
Yeah, we just watching the whole trailer.
Presentation.
Is this your
I nominate
Christopher's
Sonic Mania
name?
soundtrack.
I had to get your blood moving. Of course, dorks. I picked Sonic. Why another Sonic game? Because 2D Sonic is the best Sonic. We covered this years ago. The best level designs of any Sonic game. Mania, hands down, is the greatest 2D Sonic of all time. And it has the best soundtrack of any Sonic game, maybe even any game. And it has something for everyone. And when I say something for everyone, I mean something for everyone on Game Explain. Allow me to illustrate. John, you said Donkey Kong Country Returns had a 10 out of 10 bounce. This is a true 10 out of 10 bounce. Just look at how fun that is. Look at him playing around there in Chemical Plant Zone. Derek, you wanted more Sonic characters. Bam! You got him. Stop complaining, bro. These guys are the best. Ash, you said Sonic Mania has a 32-bit miracle soundtrack. And Andre, I guess it has compression. I don't know what you like. So to recap, Sonic Mania is an amazing reimagining of Sonic's 16-bit glory days with just enough modern flair to keep it visually appealing. It has a true 10 out of 10 bounce, John. A true 10 out of 10 bounce. It has an incredible soundtrack. Sonic's crew is back with some new favorites if you count Plus. Andre is a joyless monster that only loves compression. And fat mascots are better. You can't deny the science. In closing, I regret nothing. I'll take your questions now.
Wow, Steve's ready.
Nicely done.
Nice job, Steve. That was
Nicely
a
done.
hilarious presentation. All right, time to go to the cross-examination. Who wants to start things off here?
So, Steve, you're right. I mean, I can't even... This game's fantastic. It's amazing. There are some people out there, though, and these people are wrong, but there are people out there who complain that Sonic Mania isn't as good as it could be because of its how weighted it is toward returning zones versus new ones. 8 returning versus 4 new. How do you defend that, even though it doesn't need to be defended?
The returning zones are new, bro. They redesigned them. They included new elements. These are remixes. They're not copy-paste jobs. And like you said, Ash, they're fantastic. They don't need defending from me, a lowly game explainer. Just play it. Try it. If you don't like them, you haven't played them. I guarantee it.
Did you enjoy the Metal Sonic boss fight?
I did, because I got all the Chaos Emeralds and I was supersonic. No, I actually didn't have issues with any of the boss fights. I played through this game like 3 or 4 times before it even came out, and I was, you know what? I'll steal a quote from Derek in the review. This is a game I can go back to over and over again, just like I did with the original 2D Sonics back in the day. It's just a joy to pick up and play, and honestly, there isn't a single hitch point for me in this game. If I had to give it a rating, it'd be pretty close to a mind-blowing for me.
Not a single hitch. Those are powerful words for a game that features what might be one of the worst 3D bonus stages of any 2D Sonic game.
Ooh,
how do you defend that?
What?
No.
Sounds like somebody was bad at the UFO catcher game. It takes skill,
It was just really
Andre.
boring and repetitive.
It was boring and repetitive. How was collecting all those moons, Andre? There's 1,000.
I love it.
Stick to your argument. Stick to your game, Steve. Stay in your lane.
You spent the entire time just going after Breath of the Wild. But anyway, Steve, how do you defend the fact that this game, if you boil it down, it's essentially just a preamble to Sonic Forces?
Wow.
Did we just mention Sonic Forces in a Game of the Decade discussion? Where are we?
Derek, you're dead to
I
me.
don't. Yeah, this is something
do
so much
something.
more than a preamble to a terrible game. It is a brilliant experience, perfect in its own right. So keep Sonic Forces out of here. That was wrong. That was low.
Steve, did this game need lives?
Does any game need lives? That's
Well, this game has lives, so...
I feel like to capture the authenticity of the 16-bit era, it absolutely needs lives, because those were a staple of the genre back then. And while I think that Sonic does well to evolve the formula, I think it'd be wrong for it to throw it completely out, because it is a love letter to old guys like me that grew up with Genesis carts.
Steve, do you agree that the terrible plane sequence is in fact terrible, and why is it in this game?
Wait, what?
We were riding on Tails' plane or whatever, and you're
30 seconds.
That is a loving callback to Sonic games of yesteryear, and I still like it. I think that those are just... To me, those give me a sense of nostalgia, and they make me smile, because I remember doing the same thing in Sonic 2.
I guess I didn't have the nostalgia, so...
What's your favorite moment in this game?
My favorite moment in this game, I'd have to just boil it down to Studiopolis Zone. It was just so refreshing and new and cute, and I just absolutely loved the design of the entire zone.
All right.
Nice. Well done, Steve.
Well done.
Nice.
We're done. And that's the end of our 2017 Game of the Decade debate. So we're off to go vote, and you should go vote too using the link in the description below. Remember, your votes count as if you are a 6th Game Explain member, so make sure to check back tomorrow to see who won 2017, along with our debate as to which game from 2018 could be our Game of the Decade. Hey, if you click that subscribe button and ring the bell, you'll be notified as soon as the video's up. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow.